This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet. Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/CPR Worldwide Media. This is CPR Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
Well, looky here, a new listener. Hey, this ain't your little sister's radio station.
Why do cities shine so bright? It's the glow of opportunities, of ideas bouncing off one another, of countless people, every one of us, striving to succeed. Right now, in cities everywhere, ideas are being born. New thinking that will put us in awe of what people are capable of. That's what lights cities up. And helping people and their ideas to burn even brighter, so that communities, businesses, and you and I can grow. What if a bank made that its job? For more than 200 years, Citi's job has been to help empower people and business. Now, around the world, it's wherever people gather, wherever ideas come alive. It's wherever you are. The world's city.
It's not about how many miles you can get out of the C-Max Hybrid. It's about how much life you can fit into it. The Ford C-Max Hybrid, with an EPA estimated range of 540 miles on a tank of gas, and all the room you need to enjoy the trip. Go stretch out. Go further.
Come on, Harry!
Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13, now playing.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here.
We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome to the State Legislators Roundtable. Your host will be Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director of Citizen Initiatives and Countermand Amendment. Our special legislator guests will be discussing important issues in their states that relate to federal encroachment on states' rights. The nonpartisan Article 5 single-issue countermand amendment can remedy many states' issues peacefully without the consent of Congress, the courts, or the executive branch. We will reclaim our constitutional republic soon. The nonpartisan countermand amendment is the missing piece of the Article 5 puzzle. Our nation is coming apart at the seams, so we are countermanding.
Welcome, folks, to the State Legislators Roundtable. I am Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. The Roundtable is a discussion forum with state legislators and community leaders, and it centers around critical issues in the states as they relate to federal encroachment on states' rights and how the nonpartisan Countermand Amendment can remedy many of them safely and quickly. This is not a gotcha forum. We're not here to back our guests into a corner. We encourage serious discussions of issues important to our guests and their states. Subjects can include taxation, criminal law, energy policies, health care, social issues, federal land grabs, court decisions, education, executive orders, unfunded liabilities, EPA, BLM, IRS, and much more. You will actually learn on this program how to protect your enumerated rights in the Constitution and how the states and their citizens can identify, define, and protect their unenumerated rights in the 9th and 10th Amendments peacefully and permanently. Our roundtable members tonight include Sandy Toth, our Executive Coordinator and Georgia State Director, Mike Coombs, National Director, and Alaska State Director, Kelly Gordon, our National Coordinator and Texas State Director, and our producer. We also have a special guest, and I'll be introducing him in a few moments, and his name is Senator Ralph Hise Jr. from North Carolina. We now have 15 sponsored states for the nonpartisan Article 5 Countermand Amendment. We could have a total of 20 in not too long, maybe even 30 days. We have had the honor of meeting many of the country's leading legislators on the State Legislators Roundtable. I see these state legislators more as statesmen than politicians. I cannot think of one who wasn't trying to find solutions to the many problems their citizens face, especially as they relate to encroachment by the federal government. The State Legislators Roundtable has been growing. We probably are reaching well over 100,000 people every week now. To learn more about the Countermand Amendment, go to countermands.us. That's countermands.us. Call your friends and relatives. Tell them to tune in to this show at CPR Worldwide Media /live-radio. Send this link to others that they may hear the program tonight and participate. You can call in at 956-217-0031 to have a conversation and ask any questions with our guests or roundtable members. Now, tonight we have a very special guest and a personal friend of mine. Hold on, please. And his name is Senator Ralph Hise Jr. from North Carolina. And he has a very extensive history in the North Carolina legislature. The committees that he has been assigned to include the Joint Legislative Commission on Government Operations, Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on Health and Human Services, he's the chairman of that committee, Committee on Health Care Provider Practice, Sustainability and Training, he's the chair of that, Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on Information Technology, Committee on Market-Based Solutions and Elimination of Anti-Competitive Practices in Healthcare, Joint Legislative Program Evaluation Oversight Committee, and finally, the Joint Legislative Transportation Oversight Committee. Now, these are committees that he has been on, so I'm sure that there will be some changes going into the 2015 legislative session. So, right now, I want to introduce my friend, Senator Hise. And Senator Hise, you are free to share whatever is on your mind, and we will respond as you would like us to.
Okay. Thank you. Well, first, I just want to say, thank you very much for the opportunity to come on and speak this evening, kind of get a couple things out there that were shocking to me coming into the legislature, as well as issues that we've been fighting here in North Carolina for, I've been in 4 years now. I served as mayor of a small town, Spruce Pine, North Carolina, before coming into the legislature, and Had all these, wonderful ideas coming into the legislature 4 years ago now about changes we would make, and was elected in a major conservative revolution here in the state. The first time leadership had changed in the state legislature in 140 years. Hit the ground running, was chairing my first committee on the second day of the legislature. And have, over time, really become involved in a lot of health care issues in the state. And I don't think there's any area you would find that the federal government is more in control of and regulates than health care, and quite literally regulates everything else in the state budget as a result.
Yes. Well, one, I didn't realize the extensive experience you have in healthcare, but I do know that you've done some wonderful things in the legislature, and I don't want to change the subject onto a different topic. I just want to make them as a reference point. But you helped to advance the act that was the statute that actually protected traditional marriage. You've been instrumental in having much to do with the pro-life efforts of the state in the legislature. So you've been a very, very strong conservative, and I respect you deeply for that.
Thank you. Social issues are what are, the strongest part and the focus for me. I'm someone who very strongly believes that we will never prosper as a state if we don't understand where our prosperity comes from. And if we don't align ourselves as a state with beliefs of Scripture and others, that we just won't be successful in moving forward. But even in those areas, we now are sitting in a state, despite passing a state constitutional amendment that clearly defined marriage as only being between one man and one woman. We've now had a Fourth Circuit court, a federal court, come in and say, well, we just don't like your amendment, therefore we've struck it down.
Yes, Senator, and I want you to continue with that, please, but we're not the only state in North Carolina. Virginia had a problem, right, and there were several others that had problems. I think California had a big problem too. But at any rate,
and this week Florida as well. But we were caught up under the Fourth Circuit, which is a lot of states that kind of surround us in this area, and just because the Supreme Court decided not to rule, we are forcing magistrates and others to go out and issue marriage license at fear of losing their job to same-sex couples in this state because they don't believe, as individuals, that that's something that they're comfortable doing, and now we've got a court system threatening to remove them in this state from their jobs because they hold that belief. It really is one of those things that kind of hit quickly with the courts coming in and saying, I'm a firm believer, nothing should surpass a state constitutional amendment or change. It is the state governments that created the federal government system, and it is the state governments that should regulate that federal system, not the other way around.
Absolutely on target, and I agree with you 100%. There is one clarification I will make. This is not a recent development for the left. It is not a recent development for the Marxists. Going back into the 60s, I recall, and I had spent 4 years in the Navy, and I was going to college at the time, and there was a great anti-war movement on the campuses. I was in California, and the fact is that they were beginning their strategy to wear the American government system, wear it down, and instead of attacking through elected officials, they began to attack through the courts and then eventually through the regulatory system. So that, in fact, they gained great power by having liberal judges elected, Marxist judges elected, and at the same time putting in federal regulatory agencies that literally control the citizen and control the state. And now we're at a place where it's already at a place of having experienced great damage to ourselves, to our families, to our businesses. But Senator, hear me clearly, please, because, and the audience as well, with the Countermand Amendment, we can stop it. We can take that Fourth Circuit decision to overturn the traditional marriage work, the amendment that was done in North Carolina. We can actually take that court decision and rescind it. All we need with the Countermand Amendment after it's ratified are 30 state countermands, and it's automatically rescinded. And so we want to talk more about that, but at the same time, we want you to understand that we are addressing many, many issues with the countermand, and traditional marriage is certainly one of them.
This would come through, and I know there's a lot of areas to kind of go in through and those kind of things, but in general, one of the things I will say, the most shocking thing to me coming into the state legislature several years ago when I did, was that how much the state legislature itself feels bound by the actions of the federal government. How they feel that they're controlled by the actions of the federal government. Yes. We can't make changes and decisions in Medicaid. We can't make changes and decisions in transportation policy because court systems and environmental groups will lock down transportation decisions for generations. If you actually go west of me in western North Carolina, we have a highway system that's called Corridor K. It's kind of when you get over in the Murphy area and those. They have that transportation project that has been approved and on the books since the 1960s and has been funded by the federal government since the 1960s, yet they've never even begun to start the construction project because of the environmental holds the court system have placed on that project. Yes,
and Senator Hise, we get that feedback from many, many state legislators around the country. We've probably had, Mike, you could correct me, but I think we're close to 70 now legislators who we've had as our guests on the roundtable. Am I getting close to that number? Am I thinking accurately?
This was 65 to 70, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And so what we have are many, many legislators who are coming from the different states and expressing the same concerns that you are. And they're literally coming into our forum here, this roundtable forum, and letting us know that the federal government is out of control. The fact is that Nevada, right now, 88% of its land is controlled by the federal government. 6-7% up in Alaska. We even have little New Hampshire. We found out in a recent roundtable from one of the legislators, 20% of their state is controlled by the federal government. So it goes on, and so now you're talking about the healthcare area. Obamacare is the one, or the Affordable Care Act, so-called, is the one act that has done more damage, and not just from a financial standpoint, but from a liberty standpoint. It literally restricts the American citizen from exercising his constitutional rights in choice and in affordability and in his type of health care that he wants and the selection of doctors. I mean, there are all kinds of restrictions, and they did it on the guise that somehow they were doing good for most people, and the American people fell for it. Now, we have to give back to the state legislatures the power to say, to read, and even Congress, that your Countermand Amendment, which you didn't even read, is being rescinded. Or some aspect of that countermand is being rescinded. Yeah. We are setting up what is called a National Strategy Committee. And that is composed, we already have many, many legislators on it. And we have many citizens that are participating, including our directors. And our first meeting should come up sometime in February. And it's in anticipation that the Countermand Amendment will be ratified. But what it is, it's for the purpose of identifying issues like you are talking about tonight, prioritizing those issues, and then selecting the ones that those legislators on this committee and the citizens are deciding need to be confronted and need to be addressed. And then citizen initiatives with the legislators will be working in the states to get those particular issues countermanded. And then what happens is the federal government will look at you folks, because I see you state legislators as the answer to our problems. I don't see how we could reclaim or restore this constitutional republic without getting the state legislatures under Article 5 a tool that can actually make it happen. But once the issue is countermanded, then the state, the committee could have 100 different issues that they want to address. And as a result, we can start taking back our government, restoring states' rights, and preventing the federal government from ruling us. Now, I want to make one qualifying statement. We are not interested, nor do we want to put the federal government out of business. They have a legitimate role. And we want them, though, to recognize that the states are partners in government, not addendums to their mandates. And as a result, we are trying with the Countermand Amendment to make that a reality. So when the government writes a law, the federal government, or a regulation, or a court decision, they're going to sit back and they're going to say, oh, wait a minute, this Countermand Amendment has already been ratified by the state legislatures. We better write this law in a way that's amenable to the states, because they could rescind it with just 30 states. That's power. But at the same time, the federal government knows there's a threshold of 30, so in essence, it is not going to be controlled by an oligarchy or a small percentage of states that are literally performing as an oligarchy, defeating the federal government. So what we have is a very unique concept of trying to balance the two, and we did it with 60% rather than with 25% or something. Now, sir, you feel free to share as you'd want.
Well, one of the first things I'll say is that I feel, when our founders wrote our Constitution, they put a very strong balance in for states' rights. And they actually had the Senate of the United States was elected by the state legislatures. So you had a very strong control in the fact that you couldn't ignore your states, because the state legislatures could merely recall their senator that they were placing in election.
Yes.
As we went in and passed the 17th Amendment, and legislatures had when I read the history of it, had a lot of issues in there and wouldn't fill Senate seats and got in deadlocks on themselves, and we moved to the popular election of senators, which is, while something very much I support, we took out the intent of our founding fathers to have that controlling interest of the state legislature.
We agree with you 100%.
That kind of came through, and now we have this system, and regardless of what the issue is, that small numbers of leadership positions, whether they're in the White House or in the U.S. Senate or in the U.S. House, can direct national policy. And as elections have gotten more expensive and those type of things, and more demands are placed on the federal treasury by doing so, they concentrate the power more and more that moves forward. And so you've got a vast number of states that, depending on which party may be in power or others, the issues that those states have and those citizens have are ignored for those leadership positions. And they also establish this financial dependence on the federal money.
Yes.
We have a $20 billion state budget we pass in the state of North Carolina from state revenue sources. But it's actually a $50 billion budget, $51 billion budget overall, when you consider the federal funds passed through the state.
Yes.
Each one of the dollars has some sort of bondage with it.
Yes.
Some requirements, issue that's coming forward. Medicaid, as I said, it's that one that's the 2-to-1 match. Every dollar we spend, there's $2 in federal money. So we're already at a position where we had any decision we make in Medicaid, we have to ask CMS, Centers for Medicaid, for approval of our decision in our program. Even if they agree that's a 9-month process. that's coming through. So now you got to balance a budget in a year when you won't get an answer on a cut for 9 months.
Yes.
That's coming in, and they may just say no. So how do you really budget on any savings that are coming across? But when I go to my local hospital here in Mitchell County, 70% of their payment comes from Medicare and Medicaid patients.
Yes.
So they put in a structure. The reason the Affordable Care Act passed is that they already had such control of health care in this nation. Mm-hmm. With their payment rates and others, they could move the hospitals, they could move the doctors, they could move everything they needed, the insurance companies, to their will. That was coming forward. And we have nothing as a state short of saying we're just going to close and not have Medicaid in this state, at which time we'll watch massive hospitals close and doctors' offices and others. But we have nothing and no other alternative to say to the federal government other than I beg and plead with every congressman or senator that I work with. And we have hopefully now 2 new ones in North Carolina that come from the state legislature, our Senator Tom Tillis and Representative David Rouser, who've heard this for a long time, that we need to be able to block the individual mandates that have come down with the system. It's the only way we break the cycle that's coming in, and that's one.
I think, Senator, the Countermand Amendment will enable us to do that. And you're right, we agree with what you've just said, but it has to be done through state legislatures. It's not going to be done through elected congressional members, nor is it going to be done through the executive. It doesn't matter the party, although the left is always the more of the culprit in these issues because they like control of the states. But my point is, the state legislatures, you made this statement at the beginning of the program, that the state legislatures in 1787 actually created the federal government. The federal government did not create the legislatures. But what the other Article 5 groups are missing, and this is why the Countermand Amendment is so powerful, is that the state legislatures, through the delegates who are our founders, had the foresight to recognize that future generations of legislators like yourself will need the sovereign authority that they had, I should say, to amend the Constitution in a way that would allow the states to modify federal conduct when it is encroaching on the states and their citizens in a way that is creating an egregious wrong, and when the federal government won't remedy it. So there was great wisdom in Article 5, but the reason why it is possible for us to reclaim and restore this constitutional republic is because you guys are the sovereign entities. You have the ability to decide what this Constitution means. And as a result, Article 5 allows you, without the permission of Congress, without the permission of the courts or the executive or the regulatory agencies or the governor in the state, you have the permission, the authority, the sovereignty to modify the Constitution in such a way that will be good for the local people. And the Countermand Amendment, I'm going to read it, the 2 verse sections in it rather, in just a moment, but the Countermand Amendment allows the state legislatures to restore the sovereign authority that they, it's a tool to help you, not to restore it because you already have it, but to use it in a way whereby it can be effective in preventing federal encroachment. And that is the beauty of it. Now, before I do a reading of this, Mike, did you want to add something to this conversation?
Maybe after the break.
Very good. And Kelly, did you want to add something?
No, sir. We are at 30 seconds until break.
All right. Go ahead and introduce it if you would, and then I will wait for you to finish.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a short station break, and we will be right back with North Carolina Senator Hise and Charles Kacprowicz on the State Legislators Roundtable. Stay tuned.
This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet.
My name is Christopher Perkins, Captain, United States Marine Corps. I spent 9 years in the Marines and led a team in Al Ramadi, Iraq that risked its lives daily. Today, I'm a managing director at Citi, where I oversee a global team that provides safeguards for the $700 trillion derivatives industry.
Veterans, many of them have the right skills to be great bankers. And when they come in, they know how to make decisions, they know how to take risks, they know how to multitask. All of those things make them really great colleagues.
Just like we would go out onto the streets of Iraq, we would do an analysis of what risk we're taking and thinking about ways to mitigate it. It's no different here.
That makes them extremely valuable, and that's why we want them here helping our clients.
This industry requires our clients' trust. It requires a high degree of integrity. And so, just like the Marine Corps, your reputation is what it is, and your word is very important.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. Oh, and your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
Come on, Harry! Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13, now playing.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here.
We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back to the State Legislators Roundtable with Charles Kacprowicz.
Thank you, Kelly. I thought I had my phone off mute, and I did not. But this is Charles Kacprowicz. I am the Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives, and welcome back to the State Legislators Roundtable. We have a host. Our host tonight, forgive me, I'm kind of going in circles here. Our special guest tonight is Senator Ralph Hise from North Carolina, and we had a very challenging and insightful conversation with him in the first half hour. Now, we also have a caller, and I believe, Denise, you're on the line right now?
Yes.
Would you like to add something to this conversation, or maybe ask a question?
Oh, I'm just got in here, and I'd like to listen for a little while, if that's okay. I am a North Carolina resident.
Excellent.
And I'm also an elected speaking official for Operation American Freedom.
Well, welcome aboard, Denise, and we appreciate you being with us tonight. And we will see our program and interview with Senator Hise. Mike, did you want to add something now, because you said you wanted something at the end to present some comments after the break?
Yes, Senator Hise, there was a couple things that you talked about. One, kind of going back on the constitutional amendment within North Carolina, just like we have here in we have here in Alaska, marriage is between one man, one woman, period, end of conversation. but yet we've got a Ninth Circuit judge that has decided to rewrite state law, state constitution, by saying that gay rights trump state rights. The question that I've got is, and I've had this thrown at me before by the left, is what's your idea? What's your thought about the 14th Amendment as the way these judges look at it versus what you believe is really the way it should be looked at?
I think the 14th Amendment is one of those kind of like the Commerce Clause and others that has been expanded. It was clearly defined as I believe, as a matter of race. And it is expanded to any protected class that anyone can identify kind of across the board. I think that first you must look at the 10th Amendment. And is the power expressly given to the federal government? And in this particular issue, I can find no instance where the recognition or definition of marriage has ever been a role of the federal government, which means that is now reserved for the states. So you can't have a split system in which you say the definition of marriage is reserved for the state unless we don't like your definition of marriage or whatever else has come forward, and therefore we're going to create a precedent that never existed in the first 238 years of the country, and we're going to now say that it's established and must be used from henceforth.
And I couldn't agree with you more, because that's exactly the argument that I've had. And matter of fact, I believe, and I'm sure that you will too, that I believe that the 10th Amendment, which is part of the original Bill of Rights, which is, I think, in a lot of ways, although they are amendments to the Constitution, just like all the other 17 additional amendments, but these are the most special ones. These are the ones that really laid out the groundwork. The 10th Amendment trumps the 14th. It trumps the 16th. It trumps, all the other ones, really, when you get right down to it. That's my view, and I'll leave it at that, and we'll move on.
Yes, thank you.
And I'd follow up on that in saying that when you look at the 14th Amendment passed in the Civil War time period, when you're dealing with an entire war on the basis of individual states' rights and how they can claim them, if it were the intent of the 14th Amendment to remove the states' rights, it would clearly have been stated.
I think that both of you are on target. The fact is that the 17th Amendment by itself, which once passed, restricted the influence and control that the legislatures had on Congress, is one that should have never been. The 14th Amendment almost federalizes the whole nation by allowing the federal government to step in areas, including economics, in ways that had never been before. The CEO of our station, Collins-Windsor, made this statement. He said, Charles, and he said, first of all, he says, I read your book. Now, that was one of my earlier books. I'm working on another one right now that should be released here in about a week. But at any rate, the other one was Reclaiming America. And he said, I came to the conclusion after reading your book that if people understood Article 5 in the days before the Civil War, there wouldn't have been a Civil War. If they had understood how powerful Article 5 was, there would not have been 620-some thousand men killed in that Civil War, and many, many more that were wounded. So the point that I'm making is the best thing that came out of that Civil War was Article 5 survived, for the North and the South. And the fact that it's a state authority, sovereign authority issue, means that that is the most important article in the Constitution, in my opinion, because with it, egregious wrongs can be remedied, and they can be done. They can be remedied in such a way where There is no violation, there's no violence, it's done peacefully, and it's done effectively through state legislatures, 60% with their countermand authority. I do believe that the countermand will be a tool that the state legislatures will be learning how to use in the years ahead. And they will find ways to make it an effective way in which to counter the problems that the 17th Amendment caused, even the 14th Amendment. And they will also be able to use the countermand so that they will be able to identify unenumerated rights in the 10th Amendment, even in the 9th Amendment, that in fact have never been identified before, because there's no way for the states to do that right now without the court's permission. In essence, the Countermand Amendment with the 10th Amendment simply defines what an unenumerated right is. And because the Countermand Amendment is an amendment, the Supreme Court can't overrule it. That's a thought that I want to share, though, and before I read this, two sections here. One, when the Countermand Amendment is ratified, it trumps the federal branches of the federal government. So in essence, the state legislatures set the model that the federal government has to follow. So the idea that somehow the federal government has authority over the states in Article 5 is ludicrous. The state legislatures do not need Congress's permission to have a convention. They don't need the court's permission. They don't need the executive permission. They've got the sovereign authority in Article 5. They just need to learn how to use it. And the problem is, up till now, they've been told that they don't have it. And as a result, they backed off for the last 30 or 40 years. Senator, you feel free to share before I get into the amendment itself.
Well, I think one of the other things that the Countermand Amendment provides for states, not only in the utilization of the amendment, but I would think you would see a huge impact on the legislation that would be drafted at the congressional level.
Absolutely.
I think you would see much more control exhibited by both the Senate and the House when they realize that the authority exists within the states by using this method. To counter other, I think you would see a lot more interactions back between the legislatures and Congress back and forth, so that it would be important where a state stood on an issue when a congressman or a senator made an issue on more than just a political scale.
I agree with you 100 times 100%. The fact remains is that it puts the states in a position where they say, federal government, you have a legitimate role. We want to respect that role. But if you go beyond the boundaries that are defined in this Constitution that deny us, our states' rights, we're going to rescind what you're doing. And you know, to give you some idea of how far the federal government has gone, the Supremacy Clause, of course, is the idea that the Supreme Court decides everything. And when they make a decision, the Constitution changes. Well, the problem with that is, and I happen to be an extremely pro-life Christian. I mean, I've been at this thing for trying to stop abortion for 42 years, so I might be the oldest pro-lifer in the country. But the fact remains that when the Supreme Court ruled on Roe versus Wade, giving the woman the right to decide if that child in her womb should live or die, which has cost us 50 million babies already. Now, when they did that, they amended the Constitution without ratification by the states. That's how powerful the Supreme Court is if they're allowed to exercise authority and no one challenges them. But with the Countermand Amendment, even the Supreme Court is going to think twice before they make a decision like Roe versus Wade, or any other issue that in the commerce area or in any area, tax area and so forth. I mean, Obamacare is there because of one man, Roberts. He said it's a tax. And he didn't really even say that. And all he had to do when he made that decision was, this is not a fee or anything. This is a tax, and the Congress will have to rewrite it so as to accommodate the aspect that makes it a tax. And that we wouldn't have Obamacare had he done that. But he didn't do that. He decided that it was a tax, and then they actually enacted Obamacare, that one man, a conservative so-called. Nuts, you see, but the states with the Countermand Amendment would be in a position to say, Mr. Roberts, no matter how powerful your Supreme Court is, it's still subject to the will the collective will of the state legislatures. That's why Article 5 is there. And if you don't behave yourself, 30 states could rescind what you're doing with 30 countermands. I want to read the first two sections of this for the benefit of our audience, because many times people come into the show and they don't know much of the detail that we have talked about in times past. The Countermand Amendment has 8 sections. I'm only going to read 2 and then an enforcement provision that I'll paraphrase. Section 1. The article restores state sovereignty in our constitutional republic by providing state legislatures countermand authority. Section 2. State legislatures in the several states shall have the authority to countermand and rescind any congressional statute, judicial decision, executive order. We wouldn't have 5 million illegal immigrants being legalized here recently if the Countermand Amendment was in place, because the states would have rescinded that executive order. Executive order, treaty, government agencies, regulatory ruling, or any other government or non-government mandate, including excessive spending and credit. So now the budget comes out and the Congress says, we are going to be adding $1 trillion of debt. And the states with the Countermand Amendment would say, hold on for a minute. You can't do that. We're going to countermand that, and with 30 states, we're going to rescind it. You better write a budget that's comfortable for us. Now, Reid doesn't have all the authority he thinks he has right now. He has to balance his interest and his party's interest with the interest of the states. I think that's a marvelous tool that will make the federal government function better. And then finally, including excessive spending and credit imposed on them, that is the states, when in the opinion of 60% of the state legislatures, the law or ruling adversely affects their state's interest. When the countermand threshold has been reached, the law or ruling shall be immediately and automatically nullified and repealed. The countermand authority shall also apply to existing laws and rulings. Now, there's been much talk about nullification. There's much talk about let's use nullification as a way to push the federal government back. I'm sorry, but nullification is an act of defiance that has no teeth. And the best that can come out, the worst that come out of it is that you lose. But at the same time, it also could produce bloodshed. It was only a miracle that in the Bundy Ranch case in Nevada that there weren't bullets flying all over the place. But you see, the federal government, because that act of nullification, even though it was at a citizen level, that act of nullification did not change the law. The Bureau of Land Management can go right back into Nevada tomorrow and do it all over again. Why? Because the law is still in place. That's nullification, and nullification could wind up with a situation like the Civil War. But at the same time, when you have a countermand that rescinds a particular law, the federal government can no longer impose it. Now, the federal government does have 2 options after the rescission. It is possible that they would want to rewrite the law, but if they do, they will take into account that the states have an area of authority that they have to respect, so they'll rewrite the law in a way more amenable to the states, or they may decide to just abandon it. That'll be up to the federal government. But the states will be the final arbiters. And by the way, I do believe that the state legislatures are the final arbiters in all constitutional matters. And then lastly, before we turn it back over to the senator, the enforcement provision is very, very important. The federal government, we know, does not enforce much of the law that is on the books, including immigration, which is one of the reasons that we have, probably 20 million or so illegal immigrants. But if you have a law that, in the amendment, rather, we have a provision that if the federal government does not prosecute an intentional violator of the provisions of the amendment within 90 days, then the state legislatures or the states can do so under state laws. That's going to change the whole balance. Do you think that anybody in the federal government, including in Congress, is going to deliberately and intentionally deny the constitutional rights that the states have at the Countermand Amendment? No, they're going to think twice about it, because now they know that any one of the 50 states could prosecute them. Now, you can't have multiple prosecutions for the same crime. That's prohibited in this. But you do have the ability for the states to say, hey, you went too far. And if they do that, then that individual or that group is going to be subject to prosecution. So, at any rate, Senator, you feel free to add to that anything you'd like to.
Well, again, I would just say that I think that, right now, the federal government that exists, for the most part, ignores the state legislatures. You even have a lot of issues with federal policy and those kind of things. If a particular House member or senator doesn't like something their legislative body has done, then they have some remedy at the federal level to change it or replace it, almost exclusive of what area it falls into, transportation, health and human services. Those are others. So the important step here is the goal here is to get the amendment in place, but I think any steps we make as more states come on board, as this becomes more and more a reality, I think to the general public and I think to Congress as a whole, you open their eyes to what is the intended authority of state legislatures.
I believe you're right, Senator, and I also think you can add to that thought the idea that it will make the federal government behave in a way where they will see themselves as that I was going to use the word fiduciary, but that's not the word I'm looking for. But they will see themselves with the duty of performing good government. That is, they will see themselves in a way where they will understand better the balance between the federal government and states at the same time. And I think that that's going to prove a very beneficial effect of the Countermand, and it will actually balance the power between the two in such a way where the federal government, you've got a role, we want you to perform it, we're not going to stop you, but we're not going to let you run over us so that we become a whipping boy for you and do whatever you would dictate. You're going to tie up my land, you're controlling 88% of the state, we're going to stop that. I mean, this is something where we really can see a balance of power, not just to shift to the states, but to force the federal government to behave properly. Go ahead, sir.
No, and it's not. It's something I couldn't agree more on. I actually believe that placing this amendment other is a restoration of what has kind of been eroded over the years. But I think if you get to a basic interpretation of the Constitution and where powers are established and where they are garnered from, I think this could easily be found as being the original intent of the Constitution as well. Under both the 10th Amendment and many other things in the Constitution, I believe that this authority exists in the Constitution already. This is something I see very much as a clarification of that.
I agree with that, and 100%. Now, I know Denise wants to say something, but before I ask her to make her comment, I want to add this. The Countermand Amendment, for the sake of those in the audience, is nonpartisan. Now, why do I say nonpartisan? I happen to be a conservative, but that's not the point. The point is it gives states their rights. So California wants states' rights. New York wants states' rights. Michigan, but so does Iowa, so does Idaho, so does Wyoming, so does Florida, Texas. They want their states' rights. So does North Carolina. And so as a result, the Countermand can be used to make certain that the states have retained their 10th Amendment unenumerated rights, as the senator was just talking about, in a way where they have some muscle to make sure that they get it done. So nonpartisan is very, very important. I mean, the guys on the left, they may say, hey, I want to protect our right to petition the government. Okay, that's the 10th Amendment can allow you to do that. Or I want to protect our free speech. The 10th Amendment will allow you to do that. And they also may say, we want to protect our right to protection against unlawful search and seizures. The 10th Amendment will allow, the Countermand Amendment will allow you to do that. So it's a balance, but the fact is it's for states' rights. And then it also can be used to address unfunded liabilities in ways that have never been done before. Okay, Denise, why don't you go ahead and share with us what's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I was just going to offer to be of any help to my senator as a friend. I live here in North Carolina. Kelly has my number and is a very good friend of mine, and so I truly support what she's trying to accomplish. Our group also supports what Kelly's doing as well, and many of our members are assisting her in accomplishing her task. And
Fantastic.
I would very much appreciate, sir, if you would help her in any way you can.
Are you talking about Kelly?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Kelly is a dear friend of mine. And I would, she is my right-hand gal. I mean, everything I do, she kind of filters it for me in a way that makes me feel like we're making progress. So you're right, Kelly is an excellent asset for us and for you guys. So you help us and we'll find ways to help you.
Hey, Charles?
Yes,
Thank you,
Mark.
Denise.
Denise, I was going to say that one of the big things that that really makes a big difference is once this comes before the North Carolina House and Senate going through committees, is you and the people in your group make sure you find out when those committee hearings are being held and what time the testimony is going to be done. Either get there physically or over the phone, and usually it's like a 3-minute testimony, and get in there. And the more they hear from you, the people, the more that's going to pass out a committee quickly and get out to the floor and get a solid vote, and then move right into the delegate resolution, do the same thing. And that is where they need all the help they can get. And I speak that from experience.
Yes,
sir. If you would, could you give me a phone call? Like I said, I am a North Carolina resident, and I would love to be there. And we would also like to help in many different ways, especially
Denise,
here where I.
Denise, what we have to do in the Senate, on the phone, I'm really addressing him at the same time. We have to help Senator Hise and Senator Brody, Representative Brody, to
exactly.
get this through the legislatures. They are sponsors for the amendment, and also
exactly. And I will be at his at his hand for anything to help get this taken care of.
All right.
I'm offering my help as well as several other people's help.
And I have your phone number here. Kelly has it also, but we'll make sure that Mike and myself will follow up, and because we have to help Senator Hise and Senator Brody in a way that is going to have to be dramatic. I'm hoping we can get 34 sponsored states this legislative session. We're well on our way, but we're not there yet. And I would like that we can do it before it goes into the 2016 session. But if we get it done, we have to work fast and hard. Hopefully, Senator, if there's a need if I can speak at any of your committees in addressing these issues to your colleagues, I'm available, like I did in Louisiana recently. And I actually was in opposition to Convention of States, Michael Farris, their director. Somehow he got into that meeting, and I'm not sure how, but I had been invited to it, and they apparently didn't like the idea that I was the one making the presentation, so they wound up coming in themselves. But the fact is, it went extremely well, extremely well. As a matter of fact, afterwards, the COS people were coming up to me, 4 or 5 of them, and said, we want to help you because we like what you're doing. Now, Senator, we've got about a minute and a half. Would you please just share whatever you want to at this point, and we will then go to break.
Well, one of the things I said, and people are talking a lot about how to help things go forward. Rarely do you ever see legislation die on a vote. It's not going to die because more vote against it than vote for it. What happens is the pressure's got to be there on committee chairs and to others to actually bring something forward that's coming in. Each chair has the ability to kind of sit on any bill that's out there. There's very little ability to kind of go around that. So it's one of those coordinated efforts that will have to hit the House first or the Senate first, get it to the floor, get it moved, get it passed, then follow it on through the other chamber. And I know there's a lot of momentum to do that, but it's rarely ever when it gets to the floor that it's, too few votes to pass. It's more that it gets held up by a chairman who's not willing to hear an issue.
All right, Senator, I want to thank you for joining us. I'll have Mike call you afterwards and try to coordinate things better with you and with Mr. Brody, and try to get some of those committee meetings moving forward. We have 15 seconds. Folks, I would like you to stay with us. We're going to go to break. We have to listen now for a few moments to our CPR sponsors and for station identification. So we're going to turn it over to our producer. We thank you for joining us. And stay with us. We're going to be at the top of the hour, and we will have a special guest by the name of Steve Gronka, and with the Red, White, and Blue Fest.
Thank you, Charles. And thank you, Senator Hise. You're welcome to stay with us longer if you would like to. We will be right back after this quick station break. Stay tuned.
Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/CPR Worldwide Media.
My name is Christopher Perkins, Captain, United States Marine Corps. I spent 9 years in the Marines and led a team in Al-Ramadi, Iraq that risked its lives daily. Today, I'm a managing director at Citi, where I oversee a global team that provides safeguards for the $700 trillion derivatives industry.
Veterans, many of them have the right skills to be great bankers. And when they come in, they know how to make decisions, they know how to take risk, they know how to multitask. All of those things make them really great colleagues.
Just like we would go out onto the streets of Iraq, we would do an analysis of what risk we're taking and thinking about ways to mitigate it. It's no different here.
That makes them extremely valuable, and that's why we want them here helping our clients.
This industry requires our clients' trust. It requires a high degree of integrity. And so, just like the Marine Corps, your reputation is what it is, and your word is very important.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. Oh, and your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
Come on, Harry! Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13, now playing.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here.
We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, folks. Thank you for staying with us. This is the State Legislators Roundtable. We've had a delightful, insightful, important conversation with a senator from North Carolina, Ralph Hise, Jr. And he's still with us, and he may have some comment even after the initial comments that we make here. But at any rate, I am Charles Kacprowicz. I am the Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. And we also have on our panel Mike Coons, our National Director, Kelly Gordon, she is our National Coordinator, and also our Executive Coordinator is Sandy Toad. All three of them, and plus myself as your host. I am the Executive Director.
Charles, I have a caller. Should I add them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Hello, caller.
Hey, Kelly. Hey, Kelly. This is Judy. I'm just calling in to listen in to Steve.
Oh, great. Hi, Judy. This is
Hi.
Miss Judy Lane with We the Kids. She's a
Yeah,
great
that
friend.
one.
Great friend with Mr.
Yeah.
Steve Gronka, and he is with the Red, White, and Blue Festival. Thanks for calling.
No, you're welcome. It's good to be here.
Steve, let me introduce you just for a moment. The fact is that Judy is a good friend of mine, and we've enjoyed the ministry she has, We the Kids, and I'm glad she's listening in. But right now, we also have, did Steve Hise, Senator Hise just drop out, Kelly?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, all right. We had a delightful conversation with Senator Hise in the first hour. Now we're going to move into a conversation with another friend by the name of Steve Gronka. Steve is the director for KBN, that is the KBNC Action News. He is also the director for the Red, White, and Blue Fest in which is a national patriotic movement, and they are sponsoring a rally in May 1st to the 3rd in 2015 in Florida. So I want Steve to introduce yourself, to share some of the work you're doing, tell us the importance of it, and how this work is going to go forward in Florida, the Red, White, and Blue Fest, and how we can help.
All right. Happy to do that. Red, White, and Blue Fest was born out of seeing many patriot rallies over the last 2 years, and having participated with Zeta Andrews in the Truckers' Ride for the Constitution. After that event, Zeta formed the Constitutional Patriots and asked me if I would be the chairman of that group. In that position, I accepted. Zeta had an idea to do a national rally because we saw that there are so many protests going on, and people coming out to protest and going to quite a number of them, and sort of getting burned out on going out to protests and marches and rallies and not really actually doing anything that accomplished any real change. And Zeta knew that we would need a national event that would be able to teach people what to do and how to do it, and then give them enough time to go home and do those things. And then we would put those things that the people were taught to do into action at another given date, which would be the 9/11 Patriot Ride 2015, where we're going to do a massive ride to D.C. in order to present the work that's been done by the people that were trained at Red, White, and Blue Fest. So what is this training that people are going to do? That's the question, right?
Yes, but I'm going to ask you to give us some information on that in a moment, but I want to also add some information. First of all, for those in the audience who would like to learn more about the work we're doing in Countermand Amendment, go to countermands.us, and you can learn about the Countermand Amendment, the Delegate Resolution, which binds the delegates, a very important part of the strategy, so that Article 5 convention becomes a smooth sailing convention. Might only be a week. We could probably finish a convention with delegates in a week with the Delegate Resolution and the pre-approved amendment text. So it doesn't have to be mayhem. If you send your delegates to that convention unbound, they can do what they want, and that has to be a no-no. The state legislatures are sovereign. They decide who goes to the convention. They decide what those delegates are supposed to do, not the delegates. And the delegates under Article 5 are proposing amendments. They are not creating a new document. They're not equivalent to the founders. They're not the same thing. And the Article 5 authority to state legislatures in the future didn't exist when the founders were creating the document. They had to build it into the Constitution. So keep in mind that the delegates are ambassadors of their legislatures. They go not as free agents. And a quick example of that is in the many church denominations. When they have a national convention, they have an agenda that they present. They summon delegates from the different churches, but the delegates don't come to that convention telling the convention what's going to be talked about and decided. What they do is they go knowing that they have to vote on a specific agenda that has already been prepared by the leadership, and as a result, they vote it up or they vote it down. And that's the same thing with the state legislatures. They send delegates to the convention. They decide issues such as should it be a constitutional, should it be a republic and one vote per state, or are you going to allow it to be a vote per delegate, as was the case with the Constitution Convention before that even got started. They had to solve that sovereignty issue of state rights even before the Constitution was made. So these are things that the Delegate Resolution solves, and when you get 26 delegate resolutions adopted by the states, 26 or more, then the adopting states will actually have the final say at the convention. It'll be a safe convention then, and it will not be mayhem. So that's important. Now, that's the other thing that I wanted to mention has to do with Steve Gronka and Zita Andrews. For the purpose of clarification, Zita Andrews actually was the vehicle or the person who got us started on radio. I know nothing about radio. I'm not a host. I'm not a broadcast host or disc jockey. This is a whole new experience for me. But last year, she said, Charles, I want you to take a show on my PNN talk radio station, and I'd like you to present the Sovereignty Amendment and also the Countermand Amendment. And boy, we had some fantastic audiences with Zita. And so when Steve mentions Zita Andrews, Zita is a very, very special friend to me, and I love her dearly. And I just thank God that God brought her along at this point to get us to the place where we can have honorable men like Senator Hise as our guest. Without Zita, none of this would have been possible. Now she has a vision for moving the nation into an active role in making sure that our elected officials, our judiciary, and everyone else are held to account and honor the oath that they take to defend the Constitution. That's what this Red, White, and Blue Fest is all about. And I'm going to have part in it. I've been asked to be directing the constitutional section, where I'll be teaching and carrying on seminars for 3 days on the subjects of the Constitution, especially relating to Article 5. But there'll be many others there also. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a wonderful, wonderful event in May. So, Steve, you come back in here now and just share what you want to.
Okay. That's great, Charles, because Countermand is central to the whole strategy to try and bring the government back to a constitutional basis. So the work that you'll be doing at Red, White, and Blue Fest is critical, and it's very necessary for people to learn as much as they can about that so that they can encourage their state legislatures to take up the issue. But we also recognize that even though we get the politicians moved to a point where we can deal with them on these types of things, there's a group of people in the background, which I pretty much broadly term the power brokers, which basically try and control the legislators through whatever means, financial means, threats that they put out to these people if they step over a line that have been presented to them. And we want to try and utilize as many avenues as we can in order to work with our government. And what we want to do is have the constitutional experts such as yourself come in and teach the foundational documents that the country is founded upon. And we also want to bring in people such as Larry Klayman, who would teach about citizen grand juries and citizen warrants. And we'll have other speakers there teaching about other things. We're talking to Judge Reed Chambers II about coming in to tell people what the statutory remedies are for politicians that break their oath of office or commit other crimes against the people. So when you talk about holding the legislators accountable, that's precisely what Red, White, and Blue Fest is all about, giving the power to the people to make sure that the legislators are accountable and not leaving it up to themselves to hold themselves accountable, because that sort of scenario usually ends up being a situation where the legislators say, well, we've looked at ourselves and we find that we haven't really done anything wrong, so let's continue on the way that we have. So when you leave people to self-investigation, you usually don't get a very honest result coming out the back end.
Now give us some information about the dates, the times, and the location.
Well, Red, White, and Blue Fest is set for May 1st through the 3rd of this year, and we're hoping to have it as an annual event. The venue is Sunny Hills, Florida, which is north of Panama City. It's, I think, about 20 miles north of Panama City, Florida. So you're in the Panhandle of Florida, and everyone in the Panhandle says that that's the perfect time of year to be in Florida in the Panhandle, because the weather's about as perfect as it gets. So we'll be in Sunny Hills, north of Panama City, May 1st through the 3rd, and then look for an annual event for Red, White, and Blue Fest.
Now, if someone wanted to work with you or support you financially, how would they do so?
You go to the website, www.constitutionalpatriots.org, and you'll be able to see all the documents that describe the event. There's a document for the sponsor package. There's an event outline there, and that'll show not an exact schedule of workshops yet, but we're going to have the workshops on the Constitution, countermands, citizen warrants and citizen grand juries, and then statutory remedies. And we'll have events that go on outside. Basically, we're looking at families coming out to this event as well as individual patriots. So we want to have things for family members to do while there are other family members that want to learn about these things in workshops. The other members of the family can be engaging in activities that we're going to have going on simultaneously with workshops. So we'll have... Oh, go ahead, Charles.
This is fantastic, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to going. This will be the first time I've been in a situation like the one you're describing, but I'm excited about it. Kelly, did you want to add anything to what Steve has been saying?
Just that education is key. That's what I need to say. We must educate ourselves.
Absolutely critical.
We must educate ourselves, as well as our state legislators, who have, a lot of them have been bamboozled to believe that the federal government is the boss as well. And like Charles said, the states created the federal government for a purpose, and that wasn't to be our rulers. That's all.
Absolutely, Kelly. Thank you. Mike, did you want to add something?
Oh yeah, just a sequel of what Kelly just said. Matter of fact, Madison and Jefferson and Patrick Henry and everybody, that was the reason that they designed the central government and the state governments the way they did under the Constitution, so that we would be the masters, not them. And that's the key. And I think since the 1900s specifically, that has been lost upon our politicians, because they have become politicians versus citizen legislators and statesmen like we do have at the state level, that we have been so blessed to meet on a day-to-day basis.
Well, the federal government is supposed to be limited in its power, and it has very few obligations that it needs to do, and one of those is to secure our border, to defend our border, and that is the one thing that is not being done. That's all I've got.
Senator, did you want to add anything to this conversation? Senator
No,
Hise?
I think, I just, I think it's wonderful anytime that you're building this kind of grassroots movement and pulling individuals involved kind of outside of the normal election process in November where everybody tries to rally the groups together and come forward. I think it's the only way you establish a movement that is continuous and makes a real impact on legislation and decision makers all across the country.
Let me add this clarifying thought. Citizen Initiatives, the organization that I'm involved with and founder of, and the reason for advancing the Countermand Amendment is to accomplish what the Red, White, and Blue Fest is trying to do. That is, through education and through mechanisms that will allow the legislatures to hear from the people. But at the same time, I want it to be clear, Citizen Initiatives is not the controlling entity. The state legislatures are. Our axe in this is zero. We have no axe to grind. We don't get paid anything from anybody. Everything that we do is based on our own resources. All of our directors are volunteers, and we are simply trying to make certain that we don't lose our constitutional republic. And we have analyzed the circumstances and the problems in our nation in such a way where we realize that the state legislatures are the key. And we still have enough states out there with state legislators who really do realize how important our constitutional republic is, and others who have never been taught how important it is are beginning to learn, especially as a result of conversations that we have with them. So, Senator, we're really looking to get this amendment ratified, but you guys are going to be the beneficiaries. And you'll learn how to use this amendment in a way that will allow you to retain and exercise your 10th Amendment constitutional rights effectively.
We've touched upon a couple of subjects tonight. The health care, the court's ruling against the states, same-sex marriage, so many applications that the Countermand can help our states with.
Yes, very much so. By the way, before I run through a list here, Sandy, did you want to throw something in? Sandy is our executive coordinator out of Georgia. Would you like to add something to this discussion?
Yeah, just briefly that the Countermand Amendment, and this is what I see Senator Hise has such a good understanding of it, but what we run into sometimes is everybody is so fixated on one amendment, like say the Balanced Budget Amendment, which we need. However, it is an amendment that has very limited effectiveness for what's been going on in our country. It only addresses one particular area. There's nothing else besides our countermand that's been proposed that addresses all the other issues that we have to deal with. Loss of rights with push on gun laws and taking away our rights there. The Obamacare is an absolute disaster. It's forcing people to buy things. It's destroying our labor situation and jobs with this 30-hour full-time work week mandate that they have in there, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then so many other things like the Balanced Budget Amendment is not going to affect what the EPA is doing with coal and what it's going to try to do with our oil supply and trying to stop and hold up drilling. And there is nothing else that is going to address any of those things except the countermand. So the countermand effectively takes the place of about 7-8 amendments, because not only will it address these problems that have already occurred, it will address things going forward that any further immigration situations, the states can countermand. As long as the states want to get together and they decide that this is not good for our state, this is going to hurt us, then it's time to hit the countermand and get states together and get those countermands sent in to the federal government. But that's why the Countermand Amendment is something I have been working for so much, because it will address a multitude of problems. We don't even know what might come down the road that might be done through the UN, taking away our sovereignty. And the states can countermand any of those things.
Absolutely. I like that point. That's a real good one, Sandy. All right. Anything else? Because we're coming up on break, and I wanted to add a thing or two before we get to break. Okay.
Well, I would like to add one more thing to the audience out there.
Go ahead.
We need help in them calling their legislators. Yes, if you can go to our website and donate, that would be wonderful. However, what we also need is everybody getting on the phone. The state legislators are going into session in the next week or so. Call your state senators, call your state representatives, and tell them to support the countermand. If they haven't paid any attention to all of the messages we've sent out and everything, then
Okay, I will be done in 30
send them the file of the Countermand Amendment and the Delegate Resolution and say, I'm asking you to support this.
That's a good point, Sandy, and you're absolutely right. The fact remains that this is enough. Let me just say this gingerly. I never beg for anything. I'd rather live in a cardboard box than to have to beg somebody for something. But I'm telling you what's happening right now with citizen initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. You are being given, and I'm talking to the audience, you are being given an opportunity that no generation in American history has ever had before. You are making, by joining us, history, constitutional history, that can restore our constitutional republic. No other Article 5 group can claim that. And I want you to focus on the importance of that. Go to countermands.us. Make sure that you tell us how you can support us, what you want to do. Can you be a state director? Can you be a regional director? Can you be a part of our national team? Do you want to also make a donation? Make a donation on there. We are sending a copy of my book, my new book, Countermand Amendment, The Missing Piece in the Article 5 Puzzle. We are sending a copy along with the documents to every legislator in the nation. There's about 7,500 of them. And we need your help to do that. And so for every $25 that you send us, one book goes to a legislator in your state and or your surrounding states. So help us with that. You got $10, $100, you got $10,000. Give it to us. We need the help. And this is not a matter of asking you to help us in the sense that we're begging. We're saying this is an opportunity for you to join with a constitutional initiative that's never been done before in America. And you can be part of a solution that will restore our constitutional republic. Now, I want to also ask this. Kelly, did you want me to say something about the immigration before we close this thing out? That is, this segment out?
No, sir. I do have a comment.
Please.
We are making American history. The Article 5 has never been done before through the states like this. I consider this a little brush fire of liberty, that we need to keep fanning that flame and feeding this fire, because once our state legislatures have the power to countermand, they will be able to modify our federal government, and we can take down this tyranny, and very quickly. We have a shot here with the Countermand Amendment. That's all I have.
Thank you. Are we up against that break now?
Yes, sir. We are going to take a very short break, and we will be right back with Steve Gronka, Judy Lane, North Carolina Senator Hise, and Charles Kacprowicz with the State Legislators Roundtable. Stay tuned.
Well, looky here, a new listener. Hey, this ain't your little sister's radio station.
You know what happens when we take away the late fees and penalty rate? No one misses them. The City Simplicity Card is the only card that never has late fees, a penalty rate, or an annual fee. Ever. Go to city.com/simplicity to apply.
The most amazing thing about the Ford Fusion isn't the way it looks. The most amazing thing is the way it sees. With blind spot technology, a lane keeping system, and a standard rear view camera, the Fusion is ready for whatever comes your way. Go prepared. Go further.
Come on, Harry! Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13, now playing.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here.
We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day. Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, folks, to the State Legislators Roundtable. This is Charles Kacprowicz, your host. I am the Executive Director of Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. We have had a very insightful and I think a rather exciting conversation here with Senator Ralph Hise and Mr. Steve Gronka with the Red, White, and Blue Fest, a program that I'm part of. And we're going to speak more with them on the issues that are of concern to them for North Carolina, as well as the red, white, and blue areas of interest. Now, I want, for the sake of giving the audience an understanding of how the Countermand Amendment could work, go to countermands.us, that's countermands with an S.us. And you can click the Countermand button at the top, in the middle, at the navigation bar. The drop-down will give you a text for the amendment. You can make a copy of that text, introduce it to your state legislators, let them know that you're encouraging them to sponsor this initiative in their legislature and both houses. There's also a drop-down screen that will show you, that will allow you to make a copy of the application. It's important that the applications have an identical title, one from one state to the next. Why? Because we don't want Congress to play politics and say that the call is ambiguous. We want them to know it's for the Countermand Amendment Convention, period. No ambiguity. Congress can't stop it now because the sovereignty is in the state legislatures, not in Congress. Congress is the facilitator. They are not the ones that tell the states what to do, but the states they have initiated a process that requires even the legislatures, and from 1787 till the present to follow certain rules. And one of the rules is that Congress will facilitate the process to have a convention convened, and when 34 states complete the application for a specific amendment, the purpose for which is to propose it for the vote of the state legislatures, the state delegations, I should say, at the convention, that means that once that 34th state completes its application, it is no longer an application, it is now an order. It's a mandate. It's saying to Congress, convene the convention. Don't even discuss it with us. We are now instructing you to do it. We're not asking. And the word application automatically becomes an order because the states will have met their constitutional requirements by completing 34 applications for the same specific convention. But and then the delegate resolution. Make a copy of that also, and give that to your to your legislators. Let them know that that's the thing that makes the legislatures control the convention. So the delegates are ambassadors of their legislatures, and also so it doesn't violate Article 1, Section 10, which prohibits the states from having interstate agreements without the consent of Congress. We don't want Congress in the middle of any of this. So as a result, the delegate resolution is a contract between the legislature and their delegates, no interstate nonsense of any kind, and as a result, these delegates are controlled by the legislatures because they go with instructions on how to organize the convention, how to elect officers, how to vote, how to introduce the amendment. It's already included in the delegate resolution, a pre-approved text of the amendment. So by the time that convention is done, it could be no more than 7 days. Imagine that, 7 days. Every other Article 5 group that is proposing an amendment thinks that it could take, if not months, years for the delegates to complete their work at the convention. Ours could take 7 days because the sovereignty is in the state legislatures. Now, here are some applications of how the Countermand Amendment will empower the state legislatures to push back federal encroachment on states' rights. The Environmental Protection Agency, areas that could be addressed, and remember, any law, any ruling can be countermanded. And even the agency itself could be countermanded if the states decided that they don't want that agency anymore. And the federal government will have to do something else then. But the fact is, the Environmental Agency, they have a new process called sue and settle rulings. People like the Sierra Club, they create a false issue, and then they bring them to court, and then they have an argument with the EPA, and they have this discussion going back and forth, and before it ever is in the courts to be decided, they come to a settlement. And it's always favorable to the environmentalists. Now, I'm not an environmentalist. I'm a conservationist, as my friend Mike Coons taught me out of Alaska. There's a big difference between the two, but I am a conservationist. And that means I want to preserve our environment and our wildlife. But I don't want to put the energy industry out of business as a result of environmental policies, which are basically focused on ideology right now. So sue and settle can be addressed. Carbon emissions rulings, water use rulings, land use rulings, forestry rulings. These are all areas of concern to many that the Countermand Amendment can address. A Bureau of Land Management, how to use the land, how to tax. That Bundy Ranch problem in Nevada, the BLM said you owe the government, the federal government, $2 million. We're coming in to collect, because of their cattle going on so-called federal land and disturbing a little mouse, or some other little animal. But the fact is that the Countermand Amendment could have prevented BLM from doing that. Department of Interior is a problem. Even congressional statutes, Supreme Court decisions, executive orders of all kinds. If the Countermand Amendment were in place today, the executive order that legalized 5 million, and some have said as many as 20 million, but at least the reported number is 5 million, illegals who became legal under that executive order. This Countermand Amendment can rescind that executive order and not change the status, forcing them to go through the immigration laws to become legal in America. Isn't that why we have the laws? You know, what's this invasion from the South all about? So that we don't have to exercise our laws? That's nuts. And there are many, many other areas that the Countermand Amendment can address. First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Ninth, 10th Amendment. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It's a powerful tool that says to the federal government, look, before you make a law, just remember the states have an interest in what you're doing. Don't throw it down our throats. If it's reasonable, if it's acceptable, and it's amenable to our interest as well, we won't countermand it. But if it isn't, we will countermand it. And the federal government is going to think twice before they do what they've been doing for the last 50 years in America on the states. Okay, now, Steve, would you go ahead and share with us a little bit more about what your Red, White, and Blue Fest is all about?
Yeah, the key to it is that it's a Patriot Rally education event. And as Kelly was saying, education is so crucial. People need to know what they can do and how they can do it. And the countermands is a tremendous example of how the states can take back power. And we're going to add in with Red, White, and Blue how people can take back the power to be able to watch over the legislators and hold them accountable. So that, as Sandy was saying, that there's a balanced budget amendment out there, but the politicians won't follow it. Eric Holder chooses what laws he wants to enforce and not enforce. You can't have that. The law is the law, and they're supposed to follow it. And when they don't, what do? So then the people can take it a step further with the citizen warrants and citizen grand juries and hold the legislators individually responsible for not following the Constitution, which would be breaking their oath of office. All elected officials take an oath, even down to probably dog catchers take an oath if they're elected. So if people don't follow that oath, then they have committed an offense, which the people can hold them accountable for. But in the statutory court system, the judges normally won't hear a case like that. They don't even want to be bothered with that. So if people learn how to do the citizen warrants and the citizen grand juries, when the statutory court system won't do what it's supposed to do, then the people can require a return to the common law court system and hold these legislators individually accountable if they aren't going to follow the laws. So that's a key thing that people are going to learn about at the Red, White, and Blue Fest.
And I would add to that this simple truth, that Americans do not understand very well sovereign authority. And you see, if we focus on the fact that the legislatures are sovereign under Article 5 for proposing amendments, they've limited themselves to that purpose, for proposing amendments, then their sovereignty doesn't require the Supreme Court's approval. You see, sovereignty trumps all legalese. It trumps all convention history, and we've only had maybe 30, according to Mr. Rob Nadelson, 30 conventions or so before the Constitution Convention. We've had none since then, because the Article 5 structure changed everything. But the fact is, sovereignty in state legislatures under Article 5 trumps all of that history, that convention experience, and also historical experience. So when you hear people say things like, well, you got to be careful of the supremacy clause in the Constitution, I mean, and how the Supreme Court can negate things and change things, well, that's nonsense, because the sovereign states decide what the Supreme Courts can do. They're the ones that decide if the supremacy clause should be limited. Or if, in fact, when the Supreme Court makes a decision that affects all the states, maybe they're going to insert a rule that says, you know, you can't do that without us ratifying it. And now all of a sudden the Supreme Court is required to do things in a way that respects the states. And certainly with Congress, the same thing. So keep in mind, sovereignty is the reason why the Countermand Amendment will work. And as long as the state legislatures understand they are the sovereign body, we can restore this Constitution. Now, Mike Coons, our national director, has something to share about a resolution that he has but he has designed as an example of how the countermand can be used. Mike, why don't you come on board and share with us?
Yeah, this is written for the state of Alaska from the whereases, but be particular on the resolves, because that's the meat of it. That's the resolution. This is an example. Whereas the Environmental Protection Act and the Environmental Protection Agency has had grievous impact on the state of Alaska in violation of the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Whereas the Environmental Protection Agency has denied the state of Alaska its right of self-determination by evaluating permit requests for and at the state level as per the Alaska State Constitution to approve or deny the permits from Pebble Mine in violation of the 9th and 10th Amendment. Be it resolved that under Article 28, Countermand Amendment, the state of Alaska hereby nullifies and repeals the Environmental Protection Agency and the Environmental Protection Act, including all rules and regulations thereof. This includes all executive orders that have had a similar impact on the air, land, and water within the state of Alaska. Be it further resolved that with the repeal of all rules and regulations of the EPA, that the state of Alaska shall, through the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation and the Alaska Department of Natural Resources, enforce all air, land, and water uses. Be it further resolved that other states take up this resolution to regain all lands that have been taken by the federal government as per the above, and any other acts or executive orders that have negatively impacted their lands and use of those lands for their people and their state's economic benefit. Be it further resolved that the other states take up this resolution to regain all lands that have been taken by the federal government. Okay, I did a double copy on that. The key to this thing, when I put this together, is for every action there has to be an equal reaction. So that's why I put in there in this example that the resolve that the state of Alaska will do these things, because if you look at the states, every state from an environmental standpoint, every state has a division of environmental protection. They call it different things. In Alaska, it's DEC. Every state has a natural resources department. We call it DNR, Department of Natural Resources. Every one of those has it. Those agencies are overseeing the welfare of our land, our air, and our water within our state. The EPA is an additional thumb on top of that. If we remove that oppressive thumb and we put into this resolution, and every one of these resolutions that we do this where we can, that the state is taking over that, and then that leaves it to the states to take care of what they're supposed to be taking care of. And that way, the other aspect of it is, although we know that PETA and the Greenpeace and Sierra and those other environmental organizations are going to go completely nuts when this happens, we are going to be able to say, no, this is what we're going to do. Once we repeal this, we're going to take care of our own lands like we know how to do it with existing laws, rules, and regulations that are on the state's books. So that's just an example. There's many more.
Now, thank you. That was not a resolution or a countermand that we are recommending citizen initiatives. It's simply an idea of how it might apply. You can also have countermands that would be for a very narrow area. There may be a law or a ruling that just is really causing the states a lot of trouble. And you address just that law or ruling. Once you present the 30 countermands to that agency and or federal government, the branch of federal government, then that law is rescinded. So the point that I'm making is there's a lot of flexibility in how the countermand could be used, but at the same time, it's a tool that the states will learn how to use. And so even among themselves, they're going to sit back and they're going to say, wait a minute, let's figure out how to work with Alaska. North Carolina doesn't have the same interests in many areas, but there are some issues that could be addressed together, and we could help North Carolina in this area, and then we'll help Alaska in that area. So the point is, there can be a way to balance things among the states to really make the countermand effective, and it becomes a powerful tool then for the states to retain their state sovereign authority. I think that's a very, very powerful thing. Now, Senator, did you want to add anything, Senator Hise?
Well, I think one of the things I wanted to emphasize is that with this amendment, It's also important to recognize the protections that exist within the amendment. Once the amendment, this single-issue convention goes together and puts this amendment, it still has to come back and be ratified by 3/4 of the state. Then once it's ratified, it would require 30 states to issue the countermand. And that's not the simple task one may think it would be. It would have to be a very clear issue.
You're right.
Violation.
You're right, son.
States that we don't all meet full-time legislators that are just, following up on what's happening in other states. We'll have to coordinate much more in between states, have these type of discussions, but we have legislatures that only meet 100 days every other year. We have full-time legislatures like North Carolina. We have a long session the first year and kind of a short session. We come back in the second year to wrap up the budget. So it would have to be done within those timelines. It's not something that overnight you would see states move. It tends to be a slower process than that. So it would be clear issues where the federal government has overstepped its bounds, has gone beyond the authority that's been given it, and it would require agreement in the supermajority of the states. Just because an issues to Alaska that didn't give them the individual right to issue something against the federal government, it would be a correlation of 60% of the states that would have to come together and make that agreement against the federal government.
Senator, you're absolutely correct. We had folks who supported the Countermand Amendment early on. They said, well, why don't you make it 51%? And some said 25% of the states. and I could just see what might happen with that. But you see, with 60%, what happens? The 20%, the 20 states that may not countermand a particular issue will recognize that the 30 that did is a number that they can respect, and that in turn they may have their opportunity in the future on getting that 30 for issues important to them. So you're right, it does give legitimacy to the countermand by requiring 60% of the legislatures. And I think it also will allow the federal government to function in a stable and balanced way with the states and will prevent the kind of problems that we've had in virtually every area of our lives as a result of federal encroachment. So you're right on target, so we appreciate that insight and that wisdom. All right, Steve, before we end the show in a few minutes, we'd like you to share with us a little bit more as you feel the audience should hear.
Okay. Another key thing about Red, White, and Blue Fest, and it comes from observations of having been to numerous Patriot rallies around the country and talked to other national and local groups and their leadership across the country, is that when people call for these different rallies and events to happen, different protests or marches on Washington or state capitals, many of these national and local leaders don't know each other. And we're encouraging the national and local leaders to come out to Red, White, and Blue Fest and meet each other so they can look eyeball to eyeball and shake hands and get some confidence about working together. So we're trying to develop a greater level of cooperation between groups and trying to initiate that with the national and local leaders coming out and actually meeting each other and getting some good relationships going. And then another aspect of Red, White, and Blue is apparently we're attracting a fairly large number of national and internationally important whistleblowers. So Karen Hudis from who was a VP at the World Bank and became a whistleblower, is coming, and Susan Lindauer, who was the CIA asset that was the go-between for our government and the governments of Iran and Afghanistan, who has documentation in her files that shows knowledge of the World Trade Centers being attacked well in advance of the event actually happening. And we have other very prominent whistleblowers that are going to be coming out to the event. as more of these people find out who's going to be there, more of them want to come. So it's going to be like the place to be if you're a whistleblower. And then we're also
the whistleblower. The whistleblower section of the United States of America or Senate. That's really good. All right.
Well,
I don't know that that's. Go ahead.
They should be able to give us some pretty good fodder to create citizen warrants and objectives for citizen grand juries. But overall, Red, White, and Blue Fest is also going to be a great family event, and we're going to be in Sunny Hills, as I mentioned before. There's 18,000 acres there. There's more than 5 lakes. There's boating, fishing, swimming. There's tennis course. There's a championship 18-hole golf course. We're going to have country music concerts each night. I'm going to a major meeting in a couple of weeks here, hopefully, that will pin down exactly what we're going to have for talent each night. There's going to be more X-Men championships. The Greenhead Gun Club is next door to Sunny Hills, and we're going to have marksman championships for veterans, law enforcement, and civilians. There hopefully will be a barbecue cooking contest. There's going to be so much for families to do, and then not the least of which, we're going to have We the Kids there, which will be able to teach kids and the families what the founding documents are all about and how our country actually formed, and hopefully be able to get some education on the history of America that they aren't getting in the schools today.
It sounds like a wonderful, wonderful event. I'm looking forward to participating in it. We the Kids is a group I am in much favor for, and we've had them on our show already, and twice, I think. And just one of the young ladies that was on the show, I said to Judy, I said, I want to adopt that young lady. I mean, she just blessed my heart so much with her desire to understand the Constitution properly, rather than with this ideological bent that we have in the schools today. So yes, I'm glad you're tied in with them, but at the same time, folks, help this group, Red, White, and Blue Fest. This is a very, very important work that they're doing. Countermand Amendment will have a part in it. Now, if you want to help us, go to countermands.us, and you'll see a video on the right that is called the Countermand Amendment video. Watch it. It's an excellent video. It's about 33 minutes long. It'll give you a very accurate oversight of what this countermand is and how it can be used, why, the technology, not the technology, but the technical aspects. Why could as many as 534 politically charged delegates go to a convention, an Article 5 convention? Why is it that they could possibly create mayhem? How can you stop that with the Delegate Resolution? All of that can be explained. Now, folks, I have a custom that since we started these shows, to close our segment, our 2-hour segment, with a 2-minute prayer. And I'm going to go to that prayer in just a few seconds. But we recognize that this is a nation that has a Christian heritage. The unseen hand of God has been evident in the affairs of America way back to the Mayflower. And that the secularists have taken that out of our schooling system is something that I abhor. And I want to make sure that we have the Lord in the middle of our work, because if we don't, and if He isn't going to guide us, we will fail. I can promise you that. So if it's going to be good, He has to do the leading. And as a Christian, God-fearing man, I encourage you to join with me now in this short prayer. Lord, we come in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. We thank you that we have this wonderful privilege. But also, Lord, we come recognizing that the work we are embarked on is an incredibly important work, far greater than we can handle. I mean, I'm not qualified, Lord, to be able to make this work. And even all of the people we have supporting us, together, we can't make this work. We need your wisdom, we need your direction, we need your supporters, we need your financing. We need, God, the understanding that is needed to make this work in the state legislatures. So we implore you, Lord, to give us the resources so that in the end, we can see this nation returning to a God-fearing people one more time through our state legislatures. This is an earnest prayer, Lord, that we beseech you to grant it, and that your long-suffering and love for the American people will actually be revived, and we will see a wonderful, wonderful revival in the direction of our people. So we thank you for the opportunity of serving you, and again, we ask for you to help us, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, folks, we have about 15 seconds, and I'm going to ask our